What's going on, guys? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Back at the home base, finally tired on this Tuesday, late morning, early afternoon, but wanted to come out and do a video like I always do after every single game. So we're not we're not just isolating this one instance. I have to do it after every game. I've made my bed. I got to get in. I got to do it with evaluating Zach Wilson's play. And then just a broader conversation on the offense and something the Jets really should strongly consider doing. So looking at the box score numbers for Zach Wilson, that's where we will start. And then we will go through just the offense in general and a change they should make. 33 of 49, which is 67.3%. Hey, completion percentage is higher. 263 passing yards, 5.4 yards per attempt. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Better. 8 sacks, 80.6 rating, 2 lost fumbles. This is against the worst pass defense in the NFL. The worst. 32 of 32. The Los Angeles Chargers headed into this game averaging 297 passing yards against. 263, that's not a bad number. 67.3% completion percentage, not a bad number. But where we have an issue is missed opportunities and sacks. And this is not an exclusive Zach Wilson problem. That's the thing with this conversation. It's not all Zach Wilson, but that is the easiest thing to change. Let me explain. The play calling wasn't fantastic in this game. Nathaniel Hackett isn't a good offensive coordinator. He is a mediocre offensive coordinator. I think that's probably putting it nicely. He's a mediocre offensive coordinator. But he did something. He did 2 things, actually, that people have been asking him to do, and it didn't work. One was go up tempo more. The Jets have noticed, or Jet fans have noticed, that Zach Wilson plays better when they're going up tempo in hurry up situations. So they did that more, and they didn't find the end zone. They've also wanted, let Zach Wilson loose. They threw the ball almost 50 times in this game. Granted, a lot of it, there's a lot in garbage time, a lot of passing yards in garbage time. He threw it 49 times, almost 50 times, did not get in the end zone. And the not getting in the end zone is an issue for this Jets offense. In 8 games this year, they have 8 offensive touchdowns. 8 offensive touchdowns. And that's not to say, once again, I want to make this clear because I see the comments already. I see the fights on Twitter already, or X, or Instagram comments, or whatever social media platform you prefer. I see it already. The offensive line wasn't good, which is true. The offensive line wasn't great. But the offensive line is also hard to evaluate when a quarterback holds onto the ball for an eternity. A play caller is also hard to evaluate with really, really bad quarterback play. And there is drops. Allen Lazard was horrible in this game. He had, I think, three drops and 3 penalties. Penalties on the offensive side of the ball anytime they tried to get something or had some semblance of things going was really bad. But again, the easiest thing that they could change here is a switch at quarterback. And it's, again, not all me putting the blame on Zach Wilson. They're not changing the play caller, or they're not firing Nathaniel Hackett midseason. So we could throw that idea out the window. Like it or not, they cannot really add anything else to the offensive line. Sure, you could add Lyle Collins, but Dwayne Brown is likely coming back soon. They're kind of holding down the fort for a couple more weeks until Wes Schweitzer and Connor McGovern could come back. But I don't think they were absolutely Billy Turner was probably the worst one, but Joe Tippmann returned, Mekhi Becton and Laken Tomlinson on the left side. You could make the case about the right side of the offensive line. That's all fair. When you look at the numbers and how long Zach Wilson's holding onto the ball, over 3 seconds when pressured, it looked like he was doing the thing where he's dropping way, way, way back and running 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage again, trying to make something happen, which is what got him into problems last year. But the reality is, in these 8 games, he has 5 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 5 lost fumbles. He has 10 turnovers in the 8 games. The fumbles have become such a big issue for Zach Wilson this year. Through his first 2 years, for all the progress that Zach has made, which he went from someone who was mostly unplayable his first 2 years to a okay backup level quarterback for most of this year with a nice, couple nice flashy moments. The fumbles coming out of nowhere and rearing its ugly head. I mean, he had two that gifted the Chargers points. He gave him the Zach Wilson fumble, gave the Chargers the ball on the 2-yard line, and a Zach Wilson fumble gave him the ball on the 50-yard line. And the defense, they scored, the Chargers offense scored a touchdown on both of those possessions. The only 2 times the Chargers scored a touchdown were off of Zach Wilson fumbles. And Garrett Wilson having a fumble, very uncharacteristic mistake from Garrett Wilson, and allowing a special team score. This is the number 1 special teams unit in the game. They are so bad on the offensive side of the ball, they can't afford any sort of error. In the 3-game win streak, they had to be perfect on defense and perfect on special teams, and they still scratched and clawed and fighted and kicked and the whole thing just to squeak out these wins. Okay, so eight touchdowns in 8 games. The 5 passing touchdowns this year, too. You have the most recent one is a check down to Breece Hall that turned upfield and made a big play out of. Before that, you had the 2 against Kansas City, which those are probably the 2 best of his season, maybe of his career. You had the nice play action, throw to CJ Uzama, good ball. The strike to Allen Lazard, good ball. You have the one against the Dallas Cowboys, which was a slant to Garrett Wilson that he took and just took off and ran like prime Odell Beckham Jr., take a slant and go. And the 5th touchdown pass this year was a fade route to Garrett Wilson where he made arguably the catch of the year on. So they to get the ball into the end zone it's almost a minor miracle has to happen for this team to get the ball into the end zone. They are averaging 14.4 points per game so far this year. If you want to go back over Zach Wilson's last 11 games, so going back even to starts from last season, from when post returning from being benched, he played 3 more games. They have 10 offensive touchdowns in those 11 games. That's counting rushing touchdowns. And rushing and passing touchdowns, just total touchdowns. They are averaging on the offense less than a touchdown per game. That is with Mike LaFleur, and that is with Nathaniel Hackett. So if you wanted to scapegoat Mike LaFleur, which fine, they did that. They moved on from Mike LaFleur. Understandable. They bring in Nathaniel Hackett. They land Aaron Rodgers, the whole 9. But the common denominator here is you have 2 different coordinators that are having this issue. But the quarterback is the one that remains the same. In 30 starts, or in 30 games rather, because technically 29, but he played almost the entirety of the Buffalo game in week 1. So I'll call it 30 games. 20 passing touchdowns in 30 games is 0.67 passing touchdowns per game. That is so it's an unbelievable number. It's almost remarkable how low that number is, where we've seen quarterbacks who unfortunately weren't very good come in and perform better. Sam Darnold performed better in his Jets tenure. Mark Sanchez, a quarterback, that was something that held them back, right? A lot of Jet fans say that Mark Sanchez is the reason why the Jets didn't win a Super Bowl in 2009 or 2010. Well, at least he got the ball into the end zone, and you could count games where he's thrown 3 touchdowns in a game, and they got the ball into the end zone, like 14.4 points per game. And again, sure, Hackett's partially to blame. The offensive line, the play calling, the wide receivers, everything is partially to blame. But the thing you can actually have half a shot at changing is at quarterback. If you look at Trevor Siemian, guess what? He has the same amount of starts as Zach Wilson in his career, 30. Trevor Siemian, who I don't think is a great quarterback, I don't. But he has 42 passing touchdowns in 30 starts. He's more than doubled Zach Wilson. 1.4 passing touchdowns per game versus 0.67. That is more than double the output. The offense cannot get the ball into the end zone. They just, for trying something different, you just have to try something different. They went up tempo this game. They passed the ball more. I don't know what else they could possibly do. This is why after Aaron Rodgers went down, or go back further over the summer, be like, hey, probably would like a quarterback you'd feel semi-comfortable with outside of Zach Wilson, just in case, right? Okay. But fine, Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson are going to be the QB1 and QB2. Hopefully you don't see Zach. Aaron Rodgers goes down 4 plays in. Immediately, Myself and others are screaming, you got to get another quarterback in here. Not necessarily because it's immediately bail on Zach Wilson, but you need to have that safety net. They don't. They wait. They end up bringing in Trevor Siemian. Fine. He's been inactive, by the way, every single week since they brought him in. Tim Boyle, they don't even think about having Tim Boyle take off his puffy jacket and throw the ball and start to get loose. It's like they are so comfortable with just running it out and having to scratch and claw for maybe one touchdown. You can't. It's so hard to win in the NFL that way. It is so hard to win in the NFL that way. And there were examples at points last year. I don't consider myself a Mike White fan. I don't, but at least they moved the ball and got into the end zone a little bit with Mike White. Joe Flacco, even at points last year, was able to generate touchdowns. You go back to 2021, they did it with Mike White, and they also did it with Josh Johnson. At the deadline, they had another opportunity, one final push at the deadline. Josh Dobbs went for a 6th-round pick. He played a big chunk of the game for Minnesota after being there for like 4 days, and he's moving them down the field, and they at least get into the end zone. Guys like Aiden O'Connell, who's a late-round pick from this year's draft class, is moving the ball up and down the field against the Giants' defense, where the Jets' offense could not do until the final drive of the game in overtime. Apparently, Jacoby Brissett was available for a day 3 pick at the deadline. No, they didn't trade for him. I'd rather have a backup in Tim Boyle, who they don't want to have take off his jacket or even think about putting his helmet on. Is basically another coach out there. It feels like the Titanic, where they're sitting there, the water's coming through, they're sitting there with their hands on the steering wheel, and they're ready to go down. This isn't acceptable on offense. It's not fair to the defense. It's not fair to the special teams. The defense was great yesterday. They allowed 130 passing yards to Justin Herbert, sacked him 5 times, and they lost by double digits. The special teams, which has been great, it's won them games, multiple games this season. The special teams has won them. They allow their first big mistake, really, of the season, a punt return for a touchdown, and like that's it. You're like, oh, well, like this offense, they're scoring only 1 touchdown. So once once 14 points is up on the board, it feels like insurmountable. When the Chargers had 17 points at halftime, it felt like there's no way the Jets can get to 17 points tonight. And we can't even have the conversation about maybe changing the quarterback or even just think about like, hey, maybe let's just try something different. We got to ride or die. That's it. Like ride or die. For a quarterback who is throwing 0.67 touchdowns per game. He's limited interceptions. He has gotten better in comparison to where he was. But is it enough to win games? Is it enough to score points on offense? It's everybody else's fault, and everybody else can get criticism. But the quarterback, it's a tiring conversation. I thought that it would be over with once Aaron Rodgers was acquired, but we went in a time loop. It's back to 2022. We are living out the 2022 season once again. And we just had a game where the offense did not get in the end zone, and we're going to debate all week long who the starting quarterback should be. Robert Saleh is going to go up there as a coach that I like and given a lot of credit for this year, but the press conference, what that's going to be this week is we have all the confidence in the world in Zach Wilson. We're close. We just have to do a couple tweaks. We're almost there. It's going to look beautiful when it clicks. And then scratch and claw and get in a dogfight, and hopefully you win 16-10. They have to try something different is the point of this video. They have to try something different. Let me know your thoughts. I'm Matt O'Leary. I'll catch you next time.